Mr. Rainwater.
Hey, what's up?
I'm alive.
Yeah, you survived the virus.
I am wait, hold on a second. I tested negative Sunday morning, but I had tested. So, hi everybody. I beat the Rona this week. My whole family did. I tested negative on last Monday. Then I tested positive on Tuesday. And by Sunday, I tested negative again. But it was definitely a ride. And as you can tell from my voice, I've got sexy post-cold voice. So I am definitely feeling this podcast right now.
Are you still missing your sense of taste?
No. I lost it for about 48 hours. So Dang. Tuesday night, I had a sore throat probably about Sunday. Monday, it was feeling a little bit more. It was like dry mouth. Tuesday, I was definitely feeling it.
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, I was kind of like, I was just really tired and I just gave myself permission to do nothing. Mostly like a drippy nose, cough kind of deal. It wasn't nothing crazy.
Yeah.
My wife said I had a fever, but I didn't feel like I had a fever. But then Thursday, I was feeling better. Friday, I felt fine. But Friday night, I was eating popcorn, watching movies, and I realized I can't taste this. I ran upstairs, sprayed some Axe on my wrist, and you can smell Axe. There's no fucking denying Axe. Couldn't smell it. Could not believe it. Came downstairs, did a shot of whiskey. Couldn't taste it. But the thing that I did learn was whiskey still burns, even if you can't taste it. But then, I went Saturday without taste. By Sunday afternoon, I was getting notes. I could taste like a little bit. And by Sunday evening, I was feeling 80% back. This morning, good to go. Yeah. It was almost like all my taste buds got murdered and then new ones grew up that have not been damaged due to excessive Coca-Cola drinking. So it's almost like I've been retasting things, for the first time ever. But that's not why everybody's listening to us today. We're doing something a little fun, kind of artsy, kind of not. Did you ever watch Inside the Actors Studio?
All the time, instead of going to church. So, because it came on Sundays on Bravo. And so like my family would be at church and I'd be like, I'm not doing that shit. So what am I going to do? And that show was on and I would watch it pretty much every morning.
I remember watching it. I think it was just repeats. I would watch whenever it came on when we were at SCAD. Sure. And then when you could track down an episode on YouTube, I would watch like the Robin Williams one, like on like it's fucking legendary. I believe I even bought it on DVD. That's how much it is. But anyway, today me and Rainwater are doing the Pivot questionnaire by Bernard Pivot, which is the questions that James Lipton would ask his guests at the end of every episode of Inside the Actors Studio. James Lipton is no longer with us, so he can never ask me and Rainwater these questions when we get big time famous and da. Now, I'm not saying we're committed to these answers because we might get asked them again in the future and things change. But for the fun of it right now, we're going to do it. We're going to answer the questions.
I think also this is a great exercise in spontaneity, which is at the heart of all creativity, right? Is like being in a place where you can comfortably say the first thing that comes to your mind and not second guess yourself on like your responses.
Yes. I was planning ahead and looking at all these questions and thinking up my answers, and I just never got around to it this week, obviously because of the topic that we discussed in the first 30 seconds. The Rona will definitely distract you. So anyway, let's get into it. Mr. Rainwater, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word? Oh, God. The one that I say all the time is, that's interesting. It's not really a single word.
That's a phrase, but
interesting. You know what I mean? Interesting. That's one of my favorite words because I'm constantly on the lookout for like what's strange, new, curious. I'm always interested in looking for like or hearing things I haven't heard before. I actually am having kind of an issue with a lot of podcasting recently because like I kind of am hearing people say the exact same thing over and over again. And I get bored. I'm just like, it's not really, y'all don't really have anything interesting to say, or you don't have an interesting, like, thing to add to whatever, current event is going on or whatever, like, and that's always interesting to me because, like, there's so much, I don't know, there's so many different ways to look at a particular thing. You know what I mean? But for you, Jow,
I was going to say really quick, though.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. Do you remember, like, not near when we started this podcast, but shortly after, whatever, we were talking about, like, doing, like, a movie review type podcast and stuff. And I told you, I was like, I'm not interested in adding to the noise pollution of everybody talking about a movie and, pretty much having the same overall, you know what I mean? It falls on one side or the other of a coin. You either hated it and it's for these reasons and it's always the same reasons, or you loved it for these reasons and it's always the same reasons.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I almost never want to talk about reviewing movies. Because it's like, who the fuck are, not you per se, but you in general, the people that are talking about it, who gives a shit? Like, your friends do, and that's the point of consuming, art and media and storytelling is, you discuss it afterwards with people close to you and you gain their perspective and it's an insight into them. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like a medium or a story or a piece of work is a lens in which you get to see your friends, they get to see you. It's like a telescope. You get to look both ways through it and learn something.
I think the only way to really get at that topic at this point too is to no longer review movies, but just fucking talk about them. Talk about how you felt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not even getting into the, like, should I see it? Should I not? Who cares? Like, you're a fucking grown ass adult who can make voluntary decisions. You're ultimately going to make that decision. It's more, to me, what is always more interesting is just what for you personally came up when you saw this movie? What did you respond to on a very personal level? Because everything else is just really, like you're saying, is kind of pointless.
It's like I was talking about with the intentional fallacy thing, right? Because it doesn't matter necessarily what the artist's intent was. It's really dependent upon your experience both watching it and your prior experiences entering it. Like that, you know what I mean? Like those inform how you consume it. So that's really that, and that's why I say, like, any kind of story, like how people interpret it. Like, so Last Jedi, me and you talk about it all the time, whatever. I hated it, you didn't. And your favorite word, interesting, is a window right there.
That's exactly why I like that movie.
Because you found it interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could watch a plane crash and find it interesting. Like,
yeah, you can.
That's what it is to me.
You can make anything interesting if you're able or willing to tweak your perspective on it too. Right. And that requires a certain amount of, I don't know, willingness, right? Like there's kind of a playfulness to it in order to go that way.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing to me about that. But anyway.
All right, Jow. So how about you? What is your favorite word?
Believe it or not, and I'm not making this up just because I took a sip of my soda. Effervescent.
It's a good one. What in particular about that word?
I just want to point out that we are breaking the rule of the James Lipton questionnaire, which is where you're not supposed to explain your answer necessarily, but I don't care. We've got to fill up an hour of content, Jack. I know. We already have a backup plan, though. Number one, and this is really the definition of it is, of a liquid giving off bubbles or fizzy. Or the second definition, vivacious and enthusiastic. And that's kind of the one that I like a little bit more. Not only is it fun to say, that's my first and foremost reason for it. Effervescent is just fun to say. But I like the idea of energy, positivity, pop, 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 pop. Not so much the fizzy, but the idea of throwing out enthusiastic, positive ideas, rapid fire. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one thing to just be, here's a positive idea. All right. That sucked. That didn't work. But if somebody has that energy where it's like, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, one of them is bound to be good. And I feel like when you're collaborating with someone, when you're discussing with someone, when you're working with someone, not only is that contagious, right? In the good way, not the Rona way. Well, that, I guess it's all contagious is all the same, but I like the idea of better odds of good things coming out of something. So the more ideas that someone's willing to, and it's also said, when someone's effervescent, it's a level of sincerity and trust in terms of a relationship where you can be not necessarily bubbly and positive and happy, because I know plenty of people who do that and are fake as shit. There is a comfort and a trust with the person that you're with when you throw out ideas, when you throw out a positive emotion, rapid fire like that, that really it's just authentic and meaningful to me, where it's like, okay, I'm comfortable with this person enough that, or they're comfortable enough with me that they trust me to be vulnerable, to fuck up, to have a bad idea and not be ridiculed about it. That kind of,
I think you touched on actually what makes a relationship like that work is somebody being able to hear a bad idea and they're not gonna it's not gonna negatively impact anything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Where like somebody can hear you when you're just throwing out bullshit and it's just like totally accepts all of it. Right? Like that's invaluable.
That to me, that's effervescent. That's what I like to ride with. What is your least favorite word?
Oh God. I would say there's so many that I don't like.
But what is the number one?
It's probably no. Like just shooting down an idea. That one like rejection in that sense. Or like this is not the same thing, but sort of like, oh, we're sorry. That's the thing that's so interesting because people don't really say no nowadays. They say no by filling it up with lots of words.
A more polite way.
They have an excuse for why, oh, we don't want to fund this project, or we don't want to, we don't think that this is a good idea for going forward with this or this or that. When in reality, I'm sure there's a word out there that probably better encapsulates what I'm trying to say. But like, when in reality, like, I would rather be in an environment or in a place where people are free to experiment and try things, and just like kind of going back to what you're saying with effervescent, where it's just like, let's see what works. We don't really live in that kind of society right now. We don't really live in that kind of society where you can just like openly find out what works, kind of deal with the fact that some things aren't going to work out. You know what I mean? But that's okay, right? Because within all those failed attempts, there's going to be things that are so effective and so powerful out of all those failed attempts that'll make up for all the failed attempts ultimately, long term. And so maybe the better word is failure. I don't really like the word failure because I don't feel like that's a real thing. Like failure is just success playing out over the course of many different attempts.
How's that expression go? It's like you either succeed or you learn. Isn't it something like that?
Sounds about right. I haven't heard that expression.
I've heard that. So I'm screwing it up right now, but I'm pretty sure that's a thing. It's either you succeed or you learn. That's like, those are the two outcomes to any given effort. Going back to the word no, I'll tell you what I don't like about it. It's not my word, but there's both a finality and I don't want to call it submission, a surrender with the word no, or giving up. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not a fan of
I think never
thing.
is actually the word that I'm looking for.
Okay.
Never, because it's a nonsense word, right? Like it doesn't, if you play anything out in the grand scheme of time, never doesn't really make that much sense. If you go on forever, and I mean, you know, everybody has finite lifetime, but
right.
You know, being told that this will never work or that can never happen or whatever, it never like seems true to me.
Never say never, Mr. Rainwater.
Yeah. Well, all right, Jow, how about what is your least favorite word?
All right, so it's very close to yours, right? Or with your original answer, which was no. My least favorite word, and I'm going to have to spell it to differentiate here, is O. O-H, period.
Okay.
Because when you hear that, when you hear somebody go, oh, there's a judgment going on. So before I talked about with effervescent, I've talked about that trust and that ability to fail or be different, think differently. When you hear "oh" from somebody, there's a judgment going on. And I immediately, like, it makes my skin crawl. It makes me retract within myself. It's like I've overstepped my bounds of how comfortable I can be around this person, like being myself. And they're uncomfortable, which makes me uncomfortable. It also makes me feel more isolated and alien, I guess is the right word, with normal people. We talk about this all the time with artists. You know what I mean? Like we all fit in with each other, but even among artists, like you look at other artists and you go, yeah, I don't fit in with that person. I relate to them closer than I do to quote unquote normal people, but I do not exactly them. And, you know, it's the thing that artists all have to kind of accept in their lifetime is that they are individuals more so than anyone else. But when you hear the word, when you just hear somebody go, oh, it completely sucks the air out of my enthusiasm, my comfort, my willingness. I start retreating into my own head. I start questioning everything I did, everything I was going to do, everything I could be, what the possibilities are going to become. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like the spotlight is on me in all the wrong ways all of a sudden. I hate hearing someone go, oh, because it just means there's miscommunication about it. That's what I hate.
A signal of hesitation for sure.
Yes. And as much as I am trepidatious about things when I'm, pursuing a goal, I like to keep the pedal on the metal. It doesn't need to be all the way down, or the foot on the pedal, I should say. Not the pedal to the metal, the foot on the pedal. But yeah, that would be my answer. Number 3. Oh, this is going to be interesting. It's kind of going to be your first answer all over again. So let's see if you can try and come up with a different way. What turns you on? Okay, I think this has been hijacked by the author on this website, but that's just the question. Because they wrote, what turns you on creative, spiritually, or emotionally?
Oh, and because the original question is just what turns you on.
Yeah. That's the question, what it should be. So, Mr. Rainwater, what turns you on?
Surprises, definitely. Like, in other words, like finding, like, there is this feeling that I get when I find something I have never heard before. And I don't know, I said this earlier, but like, or there's like a new bit of knowledge that doesn't connect with anything I had previously. It just sort of comes out of thin air, and it just like releases some chemical in my brain that I'm kind of addicted to, where I want to find more things and do that exploration where it's like, oh, okay, now there's this whole other area that I've never explored before, where else can it lead? Because it can tie into creativity, right? It can tie into like this last week and probably for the next month, I'm going to be getting into a lot of like stuff concerning Zen Buddhism, because I've had a little things here and there where I've kind of been learning about, but like I recently found this collection of Zen stories that I've been listening to on audiobook. And it's something for me, it's like really brand new in terms of just a way of telling a story.
Okay.
Because they're not, none of the stories have like, a traditional story structure. And yet they're stories. Like they have sort of they have a beginning, they have an end, and they have a middle. But it's just a very different way of like taking in that sort of idea. So anyway, all that is to be used as an example of just like, for me, it was very surprising to find that, and then kind of, and it leads to this new journey for me, like not only just like finding new stories, but like in my meditation practice, because I kind of have a new perspective in regards to how I use meditation versus how I did previously. So, how about for you, Jow? What turns you on?
I get turned on, and this is hard for me to, I don't know, I don't want to admit it, but I also don't want to, I'm also trying to figure out how to articulate it, because I know it's not going to come out correctly. This is why I should have planned better. I get turned on at the idea of inclusion. And I'm not talking about inclusion in terms of diversity or anything like that, the way that Hollywood typically frames it. I'm talking about the idea of inclusion of openness, enthusiasm. It seems to be a running theme with my answers. And you know what I mean? Like willingness. I like the idea of there is no bad idea. Let's try it and see how we feel about it. Additionally, on a more personal thing, I like the idea of being included myself, where people seek me out, not in terms of an idol type fashion. I'm not looking for an ego boost.
Yeah.
I like to know that I'm being included because people want me there, because they enjoy me, not because they want my skills, not because they want my equipment, not because, you know what I mean? Like they enjoy working with me. They enjoy,
sure.
You know what I mean? Like they take something from my,
your presence is a turn on for them. So basically it's sort of a reciprocal kind of environment.
Guess. Yeah. And you know what I mean? Like I like the idea, like I am always, this is like I don't know, it must be a childhood trauma thing. I like when people approach me about working together, collaborating, doing something. I, as a young kid, all throughout my teens, my 20s, probably even now, feel like I'm always the one initiating things, whether it be plans to go to a movie or, you know what I mean? Like, or anything like that. And after a while, when you're a person that does that quite a bit, after a while, it not only is it's wearing, like it's tiresome on you, you start questioning, you know, why isn't anybody asking me? Why isn't anybody else doing the organizing of the plans? Do they not want me there? Are they just kind of placating me by letting me come along to this thing that I organized? You know what I mean? Like, so I get really turned on when I get approached about something. That's something that it's like a nitpick. And that also, you know, when we say talks about creatively turning on or whatever like that, that's when I'm at my best. When I'm in that comfort zone where I know that I'm wanted.
Yeah.
It's not about my ego. It's not about feeling like I'm a big deal. Oh, I'm so great, yada, yada. I don't give a shit about that. I really don't. I like knowing I have a value to people, I guess. And that's my long-winded answer.
That makes sense.
What turns you off, Mr. Rainwater?
Yeah, I guess this will be similar to sort of what was my least favorite word, is just like incuriousness. People who are, you talk about something that you find very interesting and they're not even curious enough to sort of pursue, and it's not because they have heard about it already or they have
When you
any
say
knowledge.
pursue, you mean like ask further questions or investigate on their own, or?
Yeah, like just or just open up the conversation about it, like you something that I'm having an issue with is like a lot of friends I try and talk with them about like really interesting new scientific discoveries that are taking place all the fucking time, every
Sure.
fucking day. It's crazy amount of data that's coming out that people are like, that scientists are processing and going through. And I had like this thing where I was kind of posting and want to talk about it, and the only reaction I got in my friend group was really just like, this article was about how a really interesting thing that scientists are finding out is that due to climate change, animals are like adapting really fast. Like they're evolving quickly, which to me makes a certain amount of sense, because I don't think we would be here if like, all the shit that wiped out dinosaurs really was like what we imagine it was, if evolution is as slow as we first presume. Like this article was about how like, we're kind of thinking evolution works about 4 times faster than we thought. And I'm like, shit, that's cool.
Crazy. Yeah.
And like the only response that anybody made in the group was just like, well, it's just because we're destroying the planet. And I'm like, and I'm just like, you're missing the point here.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing or another if you want to talk about climate change, right? Because that's a whole other topic in itself. But like the fact that the thing that you're scared of destroying, nature, and you find out that nature kind of doesn't give a fuck about what you're doing. Nature's gonna figure out its own shit regardless of like what you think you're in control of. Like to me, that's fascinating, because that goes back to what I was just saying about like we're not as in control as we think we are, and we're not as powerful as we think we are. We're kind of, as a species, really arrogant about our place in the world. And I think a lot of times a lot of that attitude, about that turned me off, right? In that response was, it's an incuriousness, because that incuriousness comes from an arrogance of like, well, I already know. You don't need, like, we don't need to talk about the subject any further. And I'm like, no, we do. Like, this is kind of a big thing. So anyway, how about for you, Jow? What are your turnoffs?
There's twofold. I can't decide between the two, so I'm going to stay them both, because James Lipton isn't here to yell at me and say I can only pick one. The first one is a lot simpler. Laziness. I am not a fan of laziness. I hate laziness. It's such a turnoff to me, because I'm a big champion of the idea of the hardest step to take is the first. Meaning, once you get going, momentum is a son of a bitch. You know what I mean? It can keep you in the wind. But at the same time, momentum can also work inversely, where if you just lay down, I'll just lay down and watch a show for 20 minutes, and then I'll get up and do it. You are less likely, or you are more likely to lay there and watch 6 episodes, eat a bag of chips. Like, the laziness, it can go the same way. So the idea that anyone chooses to make that decision at any point to, oh, that's good enough. Oh, that's, you know what I mean? When people talk lazy, it really hurts me, because it doesn't mean like, it means we're not trying to really accomplish something. We're just trying to get by. I'm not a fan of that. I would rather die a legend and poor than I would rich and everyone forget who I was, if that makes any kind of sense to what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm more about chasing something new, breaking through, doing something that no one else has do, something remarkable.
What you're talking about is my number 2 in terms of turnoffs, because like I see that a lot right now with a lot of people who I think are creative because I've seen the stuff that they're doing and or have done in the past. And there are several reasons why people would lose, their motivation or kind of stick towards just a more conservational path.
Sure.
But I see that I'm like, you're not going to live forever. Like, you're basically consigning yourself to just, this is it. I give up, you know?
You were here, you ate some potato chips, you died. Like, and I mean, there are people who I guess are okay with that, and everyone's on their own path, and I guess I'm not in any place to judge. But.
Well, but you know what the other part of that too is, and I think you and me might relate on this a lot, which is, I think the issue for me personally is that I start to feel sort of alienated because I'm like, what am I doing that's so strange that like, you can't relate to me anymore as somebody who doesn't want to procrastinate or be lazy or like say, you know what, I'm not going to play video games or watch this show or whatever. I got my own thing I need to work on. You know what I mean?
Yep. Everybody's entitled to a day off. Don't get me wrong. Like even a vacation 2 days, like last week, with the Rona, I busted out the PS4 for the first time in a decade. I barely play video games, but anyway, the point of the matter is like, you can determine a day off, but I don't know. There's a drive in me where I would like to make some kind of forward progress, as small as it may be. And that's all that matters. So like when we wrap up here tonight, I'm going out into the backyard. I just got a brand new lighting fixture, film lighting thing. And I'm doing lighting tests because I can control the color temperature of it. And I'm going to try and see if I can get a moonlight and see how well it illuminates what I want it to illuminate. I'm going to write down some stats and do all this and that. And I've been waiting all day for this. And I could very easily get done with this recording, go upstairs, make a bowl of ice cream, throw on professional wrestling, cuddle with my son and my dog, and call it a night. And that could be the end of it. But I want to do this because I don't have, tomorrow is daytime and I can't do this during the day. It has to be done at night. And then in the evening tomorrow night, I got to do work. I'm going to do a city council meeting. So, you know what I mean? Like there is no room for, I'll do it tomorrow. Because if I keep doing that, I'm never going to get something done.
Right.
The second thing that turns me off is, I don't know how to, I'm just going to make up a word here. Inconsideration.
Okay.
When other people, not necessarily me, other people aren't considered when doing things that would directly affect them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like the week before, I got the Rona. The in-laws were in town. Now, I take care of the house. I mow the lawn. There's a front yard and the backyard. In the backyard, there are steps to go down because we live on like a hill. I have 2 boards that I use and I lay down on the steps to roll the lawnmower up and down when I go from the backyard to the front yard. I don't like banging up the lawnmower, my lawnmower, down the stairs, scraping up the little chopper thingy underneath and all that.
Yeah.
My father-in-law came up here and, without asking, took my ramp, cut it up to fix his screen house. In the process of also doing that, when my grandfather passed away, my grandmother, my mother, gave me his tools, right? Means a lot to me. It's something of my grandfather's. My father-in-law used my tools. He broke the hammer. Didn't bother to replace it.
Yeah.
Several things occurred. I don't need to go into them because no one gives a shit. But the point I'm making is, at no point was I considered in any of this? Hey,
Sure.
that's Andrew's wood. Let me just make sure it's cool. I can use it.
Sure.
Oh, I'm just going to use Andrew's hammer. Oh, I broke it. I should get him a new one. No, none of that. I hate that. I hate when people don't consider other people. It's like my biggest pet peeve. When all it takes sometimes is just a simple ask or a text message. Or you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing about it is inconsideration is so hard to do. It's easier to be considerate.
Yeah, it is. I actually had an incident where I was the inconsiderate party over
I'm
the
about to
course
hang
of
up on you now.
weekend.
What'd you do?
God.
All right, don't admit to it. We can move on.
No. It's not that bad. But I ordered Mediterranean food from a place thinking that it was the place that I was going to order it at in Baton Rouge. And when I get to the place, it turns out there's a place with the exact same name over in Texas. And the inconsiderate thing that I did is, I don't know why in my head I was just like, oh, it must happen all the time, and I didn't call them back to cancel the order. And I'm in the back of my head, I'm like, I should probably do that. And then like over time, I kind of forget about it, and then like an hour and a half later, I've got like 4 texts that are like, hey,
when are you coming to pick up your food?
Yeah, exactly. Should we cancel it? And then after that, there's like several calls I found.
Oh.
And then there was a voicemail, and the voicemail was like, that was an extremely rude thing you did. We asked you, like, is the problem, part of the problem too, and this is me being inconsiderate again, was like, they had an accent, so I didn't quite catch the first thing that they asked me because they saw my
area code.
Yeah, my area code, and like, this person's not in Texas, and I didn't quite understand what they said. So like, I fucked all that up, right? So like, I tried to smooth it over and text them back and be like, hey, look, I'm glad to pay for this order. I'm sorry this happened, et cetera, et cetera. And they ultimately, it's okay, but
I've only done that once before, where I called for Chinese food and then I fell asleep, and then I woke up and realized that I never went to go get it. But in your defense, I never even called them or apologized or anything like that. It became nothing. But that's only happened once in my entire life. So you get a bye. I'll give you. You're forgiven for that one because I've committed a similar sin. Number 5, we're halfway there, which works because we're about halfway through the podcast. What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, geez. Fuck is just so good. It's such a good word. So the thing that's interesting about me is I didn't even start cursing, like swearing at all, until like, I don't know. I must have been either junior or senior in high school. Maybe even after that. Like, I think I did not use swear words very much until I was like probably in college, really honestly.
Yeah, that's probably my fault.
I'll probably hang out with you, both you and Joker. Like, because before that...
Did Joker swear that much?
Yeah, a fair amount.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say like all my friends growing up in high school, they all swore up and down the hill, but like I grew up in a religious family, and it was one of those things where like my parents are very much indoctrinated both me and my sister into this idea that like, vulgar language makes vulgar minds, kind of an idea.
Woo.
And the thing is like, as I got older, I found out like here's the problem. Because I never swore, I found that the times that I did, because they were so rare, and they were only when I was super angry, there was a lot of power in it, right? So like I remember times when my parents would swear when I was a kid, and I was like, oh shit, like this is bad news, whatever's going on. And that fades once you just use it all the time. When you're just, like when you're just going like, fucking, I don't know. When fuck is just like it's not even a word at that point. It's just like it's like a comma, basically.
Yeah,
It functions
right.
like a comma. It kind of loses a certain amount of its vitality. But like, it is a fun word. It'll always be a fun word. How about for you, Joe? Favorite curse word?
My
Swear?
favorite curse word is fuck. It's the same thing because there are so many different ways you can hit it. You can hit it with, you know what I mean? The hard F, fuck. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just, that could go so many different ways. Or you could go with the long U, fuck. Like,
Yeah.
the CK doesn't really get hit that hard because, you know, fuck. I mean, yeah, you could actually, now that I'm thinking about it. That's
you could find some use out of that for
There's
sure.
so many emphasis that you can get off on it.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways you can maneuver it. It can be fun and it can be threatening. It can be sexy. It can be, you know what I mean? Like, it is such a
it's linguistic
useful word.
Tape. Yeah,
it really can go with anything. I grew up in a similar situation where it was a very religious household. We weren't allowed to swear, which is why I think I swear so much, is that repression.
Yeah, that's usually how it happens.
Yeah. But now, you know, as a writer, I love it because it's color and it's flavor. It's something that can add to it. Now, I've seen the studies too, where they're like, oh, people who say swear words and stuff tend to be more honest. And I'm like, yeah, probably, because we don't give a fuck.
Well, and you're not holding back your language, because it's like,
yeah, there's no box.
Yeah, people who are holding back their language, they're thinking it in their mind. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's a reality people really try and ignore a lot of times.
What sound or noise do you love?
Farts are always great. I mean, you're always gonna. I mean, that's the thing, is like, I love stupid childish shit, and farts are still funny. Like, I'm 36 years old and farts are still funny to me.
That's fair.
Yep. How about you, Jow?
I mean, I could cop out and say my son laughing, because that's what that's what all the guests on the show would say when they did it. Whenever I hear my kids laughing, and I love hearing Nick laugh. It's one of my favorite things in the world. But if I wanted to give a better answer for the enjoyment of people who have heard that answer 1,000 times, there's a noise right when you start an engine. When you turn a car key and it's vroom, that purr. Whether it's a lawnmower, a snowblower, a car, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
I love that noise. I love that idea of, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's ready. That's what the noise is the noise definition of the word ready. And I love that. I love the idea of ready.
Nice.
Let's go. What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, whatever, the sound of disappointment from somebody.
Oh.
That's a pretty, kind of. That's a pretty bad one. Or a sigh, like, especially if it's like a dejected sigh where you can kind of tell somebody is not happy with the way things are going, or like a stressed kind of sigh where you're just like, oh, something's going on in this person's head, and this could affect me in some way, Yeah. For sure. How about for you, Jow? Least favorite sound?
My least favorite sound is the sound of glass breaking. Whenever you hear glass breaking, nothing good is happening.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, with the exception of Stone Cold, Steve Austin coming out to the ring, if you hear glass breaking in real life, there's something terrible afoot. Whether there's a domestic dispute going on, a car accident, or some kind of accident in general. Someone is getting hurt somehow. Money is being lost. Like, there's nothing redeeming about glass breaking to me. And whenever I hear glass breaking, your shoulders go up immediately. Like it's just an unpleasant feeling. I'm not a fan of that particular sound. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt? We already know the answer of this one for me, but go ahead.
That's interesting because I've had so many different ones that I've sort of imagined in my head lately. Entrepreneur. Although I am kind of an entrepreneur, so I don't feel like that's a good answer.
I think we're looking for a very specific thing.
Yeah,
here.
I know. That's why I'm like, oh, how about cosmologist? Yeah. I mean, that's something
like makeup?
No, that's a what is that? A cosmetologist, I think.
Oh, okay.
A cosmologist is somebody who does theoretical physics.
Oh,
basically.
Holy shit.
I mean, you could blindly throw a dart at the board in regards to like the fields of science. In any one of them, I'd be happy with. Cosmologist is just the one that I always kind of return to frequently. It's also the least useful one, which is probably why I'm interested in it. But like, materials science would be really fucking cool. Yeah, I think science in general is fun if applied. That's the thing is like, I bet as a job it probably sucks. You know what I mean? Like, because you have to deal with all the arbitrary administration bullshit and getting your ideas shot down and having to go jump through all these hoops to, do whatever. So mad scientist.
Okay. That works. That's fun.
Yeah. Jow, what is your other occupation that you'd like to?
So it obviously it's going to fall under the umbrella of food. I love food. For the longest time, I thought I'd be like to be a chef, but I've learned enough about it now that I would know that I wouldn't want to have my own restaurant or anything like that because it's no. But what I really think would be really interesting would be a food truck chef kind of guy.
Nice. Yeah.
Because I feel like you have a little bit more creative room to change things.
Oh, yeah.
With not as much stress as you would an entire restaurant. Like an entire restaurant has to have a giant menu, but a food truck can have like 4 items.
Yeah. You know what I mean? You're also like minimal staff. Like could just be you know?
I like, this is really weird to admit to, and I don't know how many other people feel this way, but I like cozy enclosed spaces, especially in the era of COVID. But I like being around people in tight quarters because I don't know, there's like a wholesome family vibe that gets along with it. And there's also, I think everyone that's ever listened to this podcast, including you and our 4 listeners, would agree. The worst thing that can happen at a job is when your boss asks you to do something that's not part of your job description. And it's like, that's not what I'm here to do. I'm the guy that runs the register. I don't lift the cow manure in the back. I don't have to sweep up the puke from blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not what I should be having to do. And I feel like in a food truck, because it's so cramped and small, everyone has their position. There's somebody taking orders and running the cash. There's somebody expediting and checking out the final thing. There's somebody working the deep fryer, and there's somebody cooking the meat or slicing the meat. There's specific jobs. You stand there, you do your job, you just keep doing your job. And it's so, I don't want to call it easy, but it's simple in terms of your focus, which allows you to be great at what you're doing. When you're not wearing 1,000 hats, you know what I mean? If you were the guy expediting, taking orders and cash and making the sandwich, that's just too much. And you can't slice it the right way. You can't cook it to the right thing. You can't do the stuff great. And I like the idea that in a food truck, you could do it. You could get it a lot closer to your perfection than you could at like a restaurant or something like that. And at a lesser cost, at a lesser effort, you know what I mean? It's not that I'm being lazy. It's just that, there's a quality of life factor to consider as well. If that's your profession, like long term, you don't want to run yourself into the ground. And I feel like you can take pride in your work when you can do something with your sole focus on it. So food truck Chef would be my answer for that.
Nice.
What profession would you like not to do?
Teach.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm figuring out my way of how to deal with that, but I think because there is a part of me that wants to teach, but I don't want to fucking teach. Like I
Wow.
don't want to show up to a room every day where
Okay.
I'm like cycling through I just do not want to do that process.
Interesting.
And I think part of this has to do with like I never want to return to that sort of clockwork mechanical structure.
Oh.
I fucking hate it. Like part of the reason why I'm staying in the sort of job that I am, A, I love what I do, but also B, like I get to set my own schedule. I get to do it as I please, work when I please, and I'm not really beholden to a particular hierarchical structure, you know. I'm not beholden to like, you know, a million different people being dissatisfied with this or that. They don't like their grades, whatever. Like, I don't want to fucking do any of that shit. Now, if like teaching is I make a bunch of videos or somebody invites me to do a workshop where everybody who shows up is showing up 100% voluntarily, that's different. You know what I mean? Where that's different from like a school, right? Where even if it's college, you have kids who come to class who they have to take your class because they need the educational requirement credits, right? They're not going to be interested. They're not going to be, you know, they're not going to be invested in what they're doing. So I don't want to fucking deal with that, right? And that's why I say, that's what I mean when I say teaching. You know, in that sense, I would not have the patience to deal with it. Basically,
that's very interesting to me because you got to remember I taught martial arts for 10 years, like a decade plus. And I'll just throw this out there because it sounds to me like you're resisting the idea of routine and monotony that comes with teaching. And I can tell you this right now, that falls solely on the shoulders of the teacher, instructor in my case.
Yeah.
Where there were instructors that would just show up, okay, teach this form, teach this move, and we're doing this, da 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 da. Me, I always looked at it as opportunity and a challenge because every student was different. And the idea, you know, there's you know, boilerplate crap that you can throw out there and 75% of the students are going to be receptive to it. Then there's 5 students who just don't get it. There's another 3 students who are only there because their parents are making them be there, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
And the enjoyment that I had was the challenge of breaking those students. And not in terms of crushing their spirit, but inspiring them, right? And breaking their apathy or breaking through the limitation or the struggle that they were going through to access the information that I was trying to pass on. And it was a challenge to me to be creative in that role to find what worked for different people. So for one kid, it could be, you know, he's a nerd, he gets beat up a lot, he doesn't have a lot of friends, and telling him, you know, I want you to imagine you're Spider-Man and you're fighting Doc Ock. And that little kid suddenly something snapped in his brain and he starts fighting with a little bit more effort. And then you got like the juvenile delinquent kid who's there because his mom wants him to learn some respect. Well, I can't tell him to pretend to be Spider-Man because he's just going to fucking laugh at me. Like, that's ridiculous for him. But the idea that I could challenge a lot of people who are like delinquent type people ever think they know everything. They're very egotistical, very whatever. If I could tell him to put his gloves on and then I get in the ring with him, or I let him fight a weaker kid and he beats him up bad, and then I put my gloves on before I even get in the ring, the entire classroom is like, oh shit, like the teacher's getting in the ring. And then I get to wipe the floor with him. And it's not in a malicious way. Sure. It's not in a, oh, look at how much better I am than you way. It's more of a, this is what I can show you. But if you can show me respect, I will give that to you. And you know what I mean? Like those challenges of breaking into the psyche of another human being and finding out how to help them, that was always what was rewarding to me. So it was never about the monotony of what I was teaching. It was always about reaching the students, and that's what I loved about teaching. So I don't know. I would challenge you to maybe reevaluate that idea.
No, it makes sense what you're saying, for sure.
But you know, like I said, everybody's on their own different path. So
and like I said, like I have a very specific conception of what that means to me in my mind. A lot of that just has to do with trauma of being a student, right?
Sure, so absolutely.
That's a very different scenario from being a teacher. So,
which is how I looked at it. Which was, I had boring teachers who did not see, and that was the thing, was I was the kid who struggled in martial arts, and none of the teachers gave a shit to try to reach me and break through. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was probably one of the most effective teachers, was because I didn't want another kid to go through what I went through. And that's, you know, like that's how I had to apply it. But,
yeah, absolutely. So, Jow, how about you? Like, profession you would not want to, you would be most likely to avoid?
This is difficult for me to answer because, to be honest, it goes back to your original answer for question number 1 about interesting. I want to learn about everything. And as you know what I mean, as boring as a job might be, I'll find something interesting. Even if I was like data entry, like it's like, oh, how are they evaluating this data? How am I organizing this? Why are they doing it that way? How can I apply this to my own goals? How can I, you know what I mean? Like, my brain works on that level. What profession would I not like to do? I guess the answer to that is going to be anyone that I've already done before that's not in the arts.
That makes sense.
So like, you know, I worked at a grocery store. I've worked at an ice cream shop. I've taught, well, I would teach karate because that was a new challenge every day. And the only other monotonous job that I had before that I would go back to was working at Toys R Us, because that was very fucking fun. Especially around Christmas time when people are looking for a toy and you know that you have some in stock in the back and they ask for it and you're like kind of like their hero. That was the ego boost that I did enjoy, being the guy that went to the back because I knew where everything was. And sometimes I would stash stuff off to the side for somebody that was looking for it, that was desperate. And I got a high off of that. But what would I not like to do?
Yeah, just like, what is just first thing that comes to your mind when you think of just like, oh, God.
I'm drawing a blank. Something that I guess it would
or
be,
even just say least favorite.
Least favorite. All right, that's a better way to frame it. I would not like to be someone who runs like a slaughterhouse.
Okay.
Or something of that.
Yeah.
I have nothing but respect for people in that profession. I think it's necessary. I enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Sure.
Very much so, as someone who likes to, you know, barbecue and cook and all that kind of stuff. And it's not about, you know, not taking an animal's life. It's more so about doing that on a repetitive basis, because I don't know. It's just, it's weird to me. I don't see the benefit of how you could grow or find something new about, I hesitate to call it murder, so I'll call it slaughter. There's no way to do it that's better.
Right.
Or,
right.
You know what I mean? Like there's that's been explored and it's pretty simple. It's kill something so it can be eaten. And there's nothing in that about that, you know, like they know the humane ways to do it now, where and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it would just be sad. There's nothing to learn, nothing to grow, nothing to explore. And you're just, you know,
that
eventually
seems like a rough job for sure.
I would relate too much to the animals because I've got that, you know, I love my dog, that kind of stuff. It's not enough to turn me vegan, but yeah, I don't think I could do that. Moving on. the very last question, actually. And this wraps up perfect because we're coming up on our hour. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates? The irony of you watching this show with this questionnaire at the end while skipping out on church and now having to answer this question.
Basically, what would be cool is God being like, hey, I saved some space just for you. If you want to, you got any side projects you want to figure out here? You wanted to try it yourself? You have so many complaints about my fucking take on things. Why'd you try it out?
You get to be God's apprentice? Yeah. That's basically fun. He needs somebody to fill in when he takes his vacations.
How about you, Jow?
It is going to sound like an asshole move to say this, but I would want to hear God say, I'm sorry I put you through all that shit, but Pop is back there waiting for you. So get going. I don't know. It's weird that I would want an apology from God, but that's kind of what, and then I'd want to go see my grandfather. That's what I would hope to hear if it existed. I'm an agnostic. I'm not an atheist. I'm an agnostic. I'm open to the idea, but I don't think that there is. So I doubt I'm going to get my apology. That's it though. That's the 10 questions, Mr. Rainwater. Do you think there's anything on here or anything you want to add about questionnaires that, maybe you've enlightened yourself to during this podcast?
I mean, I think,
or why do you think he asked these questions to, you know what I mean? Like, what do you think these kinds of things reveal about people?
I think it's about the spontaneity aspect, to see how people respond when they're put on the spot. In the same way that, how Rorschach tests kind of evaluates people's subconscious personalities on a very rapid basis. Because the idea is it's the first thought that comes to your mind with a Rorschach test. And the way that, those questionnaires are presented is sort of in a similar way, where it's like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this question?
Yeah. Because
they're all very subjective questions. They're all about preference. They're all about I think in a lot of ways they define you as a person in a certain way, or allow you to sort of define yourself as a person. If somebody didn't know you, right? If they didn't know you at all, but they saw your responses, they might get a much better idea of what you're like as a person and what do you, where your priorities are, right? On a day-to-day level. So yeah, I think those are my final thoughts in regards to questionnaires, for sure. I
like it. I think a questionnaire is always a good thing to do. I feel like as podcasters, we've gotten to know each other even more than we usually do by tonight's episode, or at least you talked about spontaneity. At least it lets you know where someone is at that point in time.
Yeah.
Because as I led this episode off with, these are not concrete answers, because I think we could do this questionnaire again in a year. Yeah. And we'd probably have different answers.
Very different answers, I would suspect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think tonight's episode is really about the idea of the art of questions, right? It's, why do you ask a question? What do you glean from an answer?
Yeah.
What should you? All that kind of stuff. So I think this was a good exercise. I think this is a good thing. And I think these questions are great things for artists to both ask themselves, ask their characters when they're storytelling.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great idea, actually.
You know what I mean? Just as an exercise to kind of develop things a little bit more, because we could role play as different characters. I could answer this as Ian Malcolm, and you could answer it as Jake from Trailer Park Warlock, and the answers would be, we would come up with different answers for for our characters and stuff. So I think it's very interesting and useful. I think questionnaires are both fun. It's more than just, you know, what a girl pulls out of fucking Cosmopolitan to get, you know, her future love life predicted or whatever. You can really use questions to self-examine and examine your work, and break through a lot of creative hurdles too, because you never know what the answers might be. And that's what the spontaneity that Mr. Rainwater was talking about. But anyway, that'll do it for us. Thank you all for listening in. Remember, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts. Shit, we're fucking everywhere. I'm hoping we'll soon be on Amazon Music. I don't know if we're on there yet or not, but I'll look into that. But
Cool.
Check us out. You know, if you dig us, recommend us to your friends, family, whoever you know that listens to podcasts that are artists, or maybe they're not artists, or whatever. Maybe you're going for a car ride. It's summertime and COVID's basically over. So if you're going on a vacation and you want to hear the sweet sounds of me and Rainwater's voice, you can check out a lot of our prior episodes. We are hastily approaching. Did we hit 100 episodes yet? I don't think so.
No way. Not yet. We got a sec. We got at least until October, I would venture.
I'm checking right now. Hold on, everybody. I know dead air is what everybody loves to hear at the end of a podcast. Chances are people have already tuned out. But
for those of y'all still tuning in,
you're going to get the magic answer, which is available episodes. No, it's not saying it here. Shit. I know it says it on my phone. God damn it. So
let's make a bet. I'm going to bet we're at episode 75.
Oh, you're very close. We're at 78 episodes. So this will be 70. This will be episode 79. So we are 20 episodes away, 20 weeks away. So yeah, October sounds 5 months-ish, right? November?
Yeah,
that's when we'll hit 100-ish?
Thereabouts.
All right. So we're coming up on that. So you got plenty of episodes to choose from. Check us out, and we will see you next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night, y'all.